So we had 3 or 4 that me and him were known at for doing good work, doing a lot of it. So that we were closing out 20 to 30 homes a month.
I don't know if the funds liked the specs and the price points and all that. They like a little bit of equity. They seem to buy in where they're getting a 3-2 that has a little bit of an equity upswing on the back end. David, welcome to the Beyond Wealth podcast. I'm so grateful that you were able to, make it out of your busy schedule. All construction guys are just flying. It's funny because right before we started this conversation, you had a call, you had to get a price, you had to send the price to someone else, and I think you made like $500 with 2 phone calls. So.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Now that $500 probably eaten up somewhere on the overhead, right? Because you got trucks running around, and those cost $1 million to fund with gas now. But thank you so much for taking the time to come connect. And I know we're going to cover a breadth of topics, but I'd love for you to just kind of tell your background in construction, how you got to the place you're at now, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you for inviting me, man. It's pretty exciting. I've never been on a podcast. This is kind of really cool to me because, you think about what making it, right? And you see some of the people I look up to have podcasts, and they're moving into the area of social media more and stuff. And we've been trying to gravitate that way as far as a company goes. But my background, man, like it started as a kid. My great grandfather, all the way up to my uncle, my dad, everybody in my family is in some sort of craft or, masonry, carpentry. They all were a family of cabinet builders, which is one of the most, precise, when it comes to measurements and whatnot. It's the most technical term of a carpenter. And my dad, he has built some of the most amazing stuff I've seen in Madonna's condo down in Florida. He worked at a couple other famous people, met Sylvester Stallone and worked in his house a little bit down there. Wow. And did some like real custom furniture, bedroom suits and things like that where TVs are coming up. And this was back, 20 years ago. Yeah. Today that's nothing. But 20 years ago, he was building some really cool stuff.
Yeah. That was when the TVs were like so deep that you had to build a cabinet to fit them in,
Yeah. And it weighed like 84 pounds,
Exactly.
You wouldn't even, nobody stole TVs back then. They were too heavy.
Yeah. It was so funny. I saw this old post, because you just see random stuff on Instagram, but it was this, kind of vintage, probably early 90s or whatever, and a similar TV, and they're like, how much you spend on that? And I mean, it couldn't have been but this big. It was a big screen, but for that time. And he's like, $2,000. And I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
TV tech has come a long way. So what's interesting about the cabinet work is like a lot of times you're building the cabinets off site and then you bring them in, and if they are wrong, I mean, you are up a river.
Yeah, you have very little room for error, but what a little bit we install what they call like fillers or cut fills, right? So the end cabinets that would hit a wall or whatever, the style would be a little bit longer on it, so we can cut the side of it to give us a little bit of grace.
Okay, so on site you're like, okay, we can do the final.
Yeah. Okay. So and more important, the kitchens I install today are not like those my dad built where they were all custom. We do more like semi-custom cabinets nowadays in most of the houses that we work in, and unless we are doing a really high-end home where they'll have an inset kitchen.
Right.
But I grew up despising kitchen cabinets and all the cabinet work because I was a young man, and as a young man you just want to play, But my dad, I worked with him in the shop, and by the age of 14, he was telling me things like, you're better than most of the grown men that work for me, and I did. I took on the knowledge at a young age, and I mean today I can build anything as far as that goes,
Yeah.
So
I think about when you talk about the precision and the discipline that probably built in you to be attentive to the details. Like now I'm working with my son, he's 10, and he's really does not love math. But it's so detail oriented. And I'm like, I get you don't love math right now, man, but it's teaching you the discipline of details. Yeah. Like you just have to do every little step or else the whole thing's wrong. And so that's probably what happened with you is it built this like innate like detail focus, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah. And also it gave me the problem solution skills that I took later on in life. I didn't even realize it, but I navigated toward framing houses when I was when I moved away, and I don't want to work for my dad no more, and I kind of wanted to become my own man. Found myself toting lumber on a lumber yard. I mean, you don't know how to build a house just because you know how to build cabinets, But what you do know is how to use a tape measure. You know how to use a major saw. You know how to construct stuff and see it too, 3-dimensional. That's the big skill that it gave me. Seeing, I can look at what's on paper and see it visually.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then yeah, man. But I haven't instilled that in my kids. I tell you that. I told them, you don't have to work. Don't worry about it. And I wish I would have given them a little bit more of what my dad gave me.
Yeah. Okay, so next step, you did the cabinet work for a while, and then you kind of branch out on your own and start working. Was that when you jumped in Brassville Gore, or there was a time in between that?
No, there was a time in between there where I took a job, as a carpenter's helper.
Nice.
Building houses. Okay. With my ex-brother-in-law, who now works for me at ALR. Okay. Him and his uncle ran a company, and we built houses, and I kind of learned a little bit about the framing side of things. Really didn't stay there long. Kind of got away from there and jumped into vinyl siding, man. And that's where I picked up on vinyl siding so fast that I was running. At 18 years old, I had a 5-man crew that I was in charge of that were grown men. And I never, since that day, I was never not the one in charge on a job. Once I met that threshold, it moved into other areas of my life where my skills developed. Renovations became a big part of that when I started my first company at 20. Mm-hmm. And it was very successful until the market crashed. 2006, 7. Yeah. Market crashed. That was when I found refuge with Brassville and Gore.
Nice.
And you talk about career taking off there. Like, the knowledge and the skill set and the discipline that you mentioned that they gave me and just poured into me, I can't say more about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I wanted to kind of talk through that a little bit of the differences of, because you're back in the private space, working for yourself, building your own company, ALR Construction.
Yes, sir.
And you've kind of gotten to work the big corporate construction job and also build your own thing. And I wanted to kind of break apart the skill sets needed, the differences, the good and the bad of both of those environments. So let's just talk about that experience at Brassville and Gore. Like, what did you take? You were there for a good bit of time.
13 years.
What did you kind of glean and pull from that, and what did you enjoy about that more bigger construction company, corporate environment?
Well, I've always had a really hard working ethic, like work for what you earn, and a very conscious contact with God where I didn't feel like I was entitled. So even I was passed up numerous times when I was working at Brassville and Gore for promotions, and other people received them for outside. I'm not going to judge people, but so what I took from there in the very beginning was, well, first of all, absolutely loved the idea of building something so large, right?
Yeah.
Because I was building small scale stuff. And you can take the same skill sets of building a cabinet box and apply it to a building, except there's different components that go into it. But the structure and the way that everything is, resting on one another or tied together is usually about the same. But building skyscrapers and, multi-level concrete forms, I took outside of the ability to learn and reading drawings, they sent me to engineering basic class, so I learned how to shoot elevations and read elevations and longitudes and latitudes. They just expanded the knowledge of I didn't even know that I was capable of doing some of the stuff that I learned there,
Yeah.
And then skill set training, personality training, things like that where, learning how to motivate people who had different motivation skills or ways of being motivated, and learning how to communicate with people on a really professional way, because you're responsible for such a large amount of responsibilities on this job, and then when I moved into really outside of the what I call the infrastructure of a building, concrete foundations, they started teaching me where my OR rooms, designing, where surgical rooms and gas lines going in, just The knowledge is just extreme. The saying is, if you could build a hospital, you could build anything.
Yeah, that's interesting because the restrictions, the codes, the specifications are such at a different level. I know a guy I do a good bit of, he's a good friend of mine. He has done a lot of residential, but then he's branched into some commercial. And he was just talking about this one building that he built out of Airbnb. And he was like, the fire system is not your residential fire system. Like, is expensive, and it had to be tested. And, you know, so I imagine a hospital is just at a whole nother level of all the other things that have to be routed for the OR rooms, and just a crazy level of detail.
I've always gotten in, I remember here's a little short story. I was a concrete foreman at this point, right? I was still climbing a ladder, but I'd only been there 3 years. So that tells you the rate. Within 7 years, I was assistant superintendent, you know, very fast paced mover. But I'm sitting there eating lunch with my crew, about 20 guys, and they were talking about, man, I really like, because I think I had been on the backhoe that day digging for footings. Man, I wish I had that job. And each one of them had a part that they really enjoyed doing of this, right? And I said, you know what I like the most? And they said, what? I said, I like operating all of you.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the skill set is. Taking your personality, putting you somewhere where you thrive at, taking you and and operating and building a team to create, you know, structure. I took that. You asked me, what did I take from there? I took from Brassfield the ability to take myself out of it. I don't know everything, so I built a team at ALR with a good financial support, a good receptionist, a good project manager, good assistant superintendents, good carpenters, and we control it together. Because I'm not the guy that knows everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot about business I don't know about.
Man, that's so great. Yeah, like ultimately you took from it the team, how to build a team and how to manage people and make successful. Because everybody can, you know, a lot of people can manage a team. Very few people, I think, manage a team successfully.
Yeah.
You know, because like you said, there's so many different personalities. Yeah. What motivates people is different, you know, and you know, I think in this industry even more so because some of the trades are getting to where there are fewer and fewer of tradesmen. Reliable tradesmen. You have to really build those relationships and make sure those stay strong. So you go for the Brassfield and Gore. You do that for a good bit of time. What made you make the jump to build your own thing? So
I was in the shower. Funny or not, right? Like
I do a lot of my thinking in the shower too.
I do a lot of praying in the shower. And somebody had mentioned to me, hey, you should start your own company again. You know, and it had been, I don't know, 15, 20 years, you know. And there was a lot of fear behind that.
Yeah.
It was like, man, it was so hard the first time. It took so much effort, so much work, you know. And I just didn't know if I was up for it, you know, to be honest with you. And I just prayed about it in the shower one day because somebody had said it twice or three times. And finally I prayed about it because I started thinking maybe I could do it again.
Right.
And I heard this loud voice in my head. And I believe it was God, and I still believe it is. It was like, do it. And I was like, really? And I was like, well, how am I going to find work? And it said, don't worry about it. I'm paving a path for you. And I'll be honest with you. You want to talk about, once I took the leap of faith, you know, I found Conrex immediately after that. And they were just, you know, it was a way for me to just get work and not really have to look for it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what you need as a small business. So the last time I started my first company, I started as a subcontractor. I found a siding company in Tuscaloosa who needed a subcontractor. And they actually supplied me with tools and a truck, and they cut it out of my subcontract price. So I wasn't an hourly employee. I was actually starting to build my own company that way. I implemented the same thing, and this time I built it. I said, okay, what did I do last time? Well, I went to a window company, Window World. You maybe have heard of them, right? And I said, hey, do you need a subcontractor? I want to install windows for you. Well, I sold one of my vehicles. I had about $5,000. I put insurance, workers' comp, and they started putting me to work. You know, and then I started looking for other avenues of revenue, And it was me and two guys that started this. just with Window World and Eco Windows, and I'm putting a shout out for them. I don't even know if that's like, I didn't mean to, because I don't do any work for either one of them anymore. But, that's how I started, and that created revenue without me having to look for work. But then work will come eventually organically if you do what you say and you're good at what you do and you do good quality.
Yep.
It's so easy.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to be a business.
Oh, yeah. Your name is the biggest, the biggest thing to your business is your name and making sure you do quality work and all that. So you did early on, you said, pick up Conrex, which to those who don't know, is a fund. So there, we have a lot of those who operate in town, and they're basically bigger corporations who pool a bunch of money together, either Wall Street money or private investor money, and are buying not 10 houses, but 30 a month. And
hundreds. Yes.
They're and then they need to be renovated, or they buy previous rentals that need fixed up, or different things. And so then they had a lot of contractors. I've had several guys who've come in, and they, during that really big push, everybody was working for several funds. Yeah. And so through that, how many renos were you guys doing, and what areas were you guys doing stuff? And
dude, it blew my mind, listening to a voice in my head and just stepping out there. And I found Window World and Eco Windows, and that worked but then I was trying to find other revenues, and I was on Craigslist back in the day. Craigslist, it wasn't Facebook Marketplace, it was Craigslist, right? Yeah. So I'm looking at Craigslist for gigs, and I see, hey, we need a contractor to do soft renovations, and I called it, and it was a Conrex rep, right? Yeah, and I meet him, and I do one house, and it's like $20,000. It's a soft reno. But me and two guys, we knock it out in 3 days.
Paint, flooring, a few odds and ends. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. And he started, like, next thing you know, the next week, he's like, here, let's go look at this one, this one, this one. And there was like 4 or 5 of them. And I was like, wow, this is going to be really good. So at the really hype of it, so I consider there was 2 big players, and one of them I happen to know. I'm not going to say his name. He may not want me to, but he and I were considered some of the best renovation companies here in Birmingham. Yeah. And I'll say his first name is Josh. His last name I won't say. In case he does listen to this, I want him to hear him. I met him not long ago. We were in the business for 7 years against each other. Against, I say, but they really pinned us against each other. Yeah. Can I say other names?
On pricing and different things like that.
Well, no, other companies, hedge fund group, Main Street Renewals was one of them. First Key is another one. Yep. So we had 3 or 4 that me and him were known for doing good work, doing a lot of it. So I had 35 at one time. Wow. We had gotten into where we're doing so many that we were closing out 20 to 30 homes a month. Man, and just burning through. Yeah. And the margins aren't great on those jobs, but if you're a new startup company, and you're doing $3 million a year with a hedge fund group investment, man, you're doing good. I don't care what you say. You're paying people, even though you're only making 12% margins on, and back then I was young at it. I didn't know what a margin was. I knew
you're just like, we got a lot of money. Money's coming in, but it's money's going out. Yeah. Talk me through a little bit. So when you're doing that much, how many internal people do you have? And then obviously you're subcontracting to other crews, if you will. Yeah. How much percentage wise is internal? Like, I've got my guys that are managing, I've got my guys that are specific to, that cabinet, I know I just got to send my guy over there to get it done because it's not going to be done well if it's not. And then how much a percentage was, hey, I just got crews that I'm rolling to the next one, and I've got my painter crew, but don't technically, the painters don't work for you, they're subs.
So oddly enough, back then I had crews that did, we had carpenter crew, painting crew. The only thing we didn't do in the jobs were electrical and MEPs, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical. Okay. But those were my subs. But outside of that, we were doing all of the work. And we had, 5 painters, and they go in and paint a house in a day and move to the next one and come back and do trim out. And when they weren't painting, they were installing grab bars and mirrors and vanities, they would jump in, and they would, a good group can move really quick, So we were doing most of it until we got to we were doing that many homes. We ended up paying a whole crew to do all of it. Right. So I had subs that worked under me, do the whole house, and we would make 20% off the top.
Right.
You know, and I just supply them with all the materials, you know, and that worked really well. We would have 7 or 8 of those going on with ours, you know, and so we did whatever we needed to do.
It's kind of a mix. Yeah, because if you get 35, the next month could be 20.
It could be.
And so you need to have some flex with subs and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk 30,000 foot view. Let's talk about areas of Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we always like to be specific. So I say that in the context of, you know, there was a really big boom. I think it was a combination of pricing of homes, interest rates, and demand. You know, you had even places, people like Spartan, who was doing kind of the turnkey model where they weren't holding the, you know, property like a fund. They were making a turnkey product and selling it. They did a ton of stuff in Center Point, I would say 15 years ago. They're not doing as much in Center Point now because Center Point kind of has priced out. And there's some restrictions, and there's some issues with permits. You know, permits and stuff, and it got really difficult, right? So the market has shifted, but during that time, I think if we break apart, I know this is a long way to get to it, but if we break apart where you were working, then we'll kind of backlog. Like there's still a decent amount of rentals in these pockets that these funds own.
That's true.
And some are coming offline and going back to owner occupants. But was it Center Point? Was it Grayson Valley? Was it over in Adamsville? Was it Pelham? Like I know it's probably quote unquote all over, but where were you primarily?
Bulk. Center Point would be the number one location that a lot of the houses came from. I mean, they were buying big numbers. And at first, you know, some of them go no permit pulling, you know.
Yeah.
That created a big stink. And then when they did, Center Point, what happened was when they got wind of this, they found out how much revenue they're losing, right? And they start really busting down, hire several superintendents because the boom in market was booming. And they're hitting you with everything, man. Like, dude, they were so difficult. Nobody wanted to work over there.
Yeah.
These investors had houses sitting there because a contractor didn't want to take it because they didn't want to deal with it.
Yep.
They ended up having to put so much money into them for somebody like me to go do it. It didn't make sense. So people stopped buying over there. There's still tons of houses over there right now that are great homes, great rental properties. People want to live there. I mean, what is it? Roebuck right in front of that, man, is really
it's great pocket. I mean, there's nice. Great retail there. It's close to downtown.
Good flips. I mean, those houses are nice, you know. And as you migrate down, you know, over toward Crestline and all of that, great area to flip houses, but your price points are going to go up, you know.
Yeah.
Where we were working primary, like you said, we were in Roebuck area a lot, and then Center Point, but also Inslee, man. Inslee.
Yeah.
I did probably 80 houses in Inslee.
Okay. And did you do anything in Tarrant?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I know that's been kind of a pocket that's not as much.
Not on the Pinson side, but like on the airport side over there.
Okay.
It was kind of, you know, going that way. We did a few.
Okay. But not as much. I mean, 80 in Inslee is pretty significant.
Yeah. Inslee's, man, I had an electrician get robbed out there working on one of my houses, you know. Inslee's not nowhere to play, but people are moving there, and the houses are – and Bessemer, man. Bessemer – we were in Bessemer all the time. We always had 2 or 3 houses in Bessemer go, and the whole thing about Bessemer, not too much came up on the market. People like if it come up on the market, it would sell. Hueytown's another one, you know.
It's an interesting thing. So I have a flip right now in Bessemer. It's kind of on that lower pocket, really close to 459 and close to like the Target. I mean, it's a great location. And it's butted up right next to some builds. Like this house is not. This is like a 60s home, but it's butted up against some more 80s builds, 90s builds. So, but all that to say, it was crazy when I pulled comps. Like it was very difficult to pull comps, like because just not a lot was moving.
No,
and I was like, you know, I had to kind of guess a little bit, and then you drive neighborhoods, and you're kind of like, you know, a good neighborhood when you see it, and you know, a bad neighborhood when you see it, you know, and there's just indicators. And this neighborhood, all the lawns are being taken care of. Like, are the price points $400,000? No. but like people have pride of ownership.
That's right.
And I was just like, I think this is gonna be, at this price point where I think we ended up getting under contract for like 165. So hopefully close next week. But
that's a hold property though, probably, right?
It would have. I'm kind of in dispo mode right now, so I'm not in acquisitions. If I was in acquisitions mode, I would have held it and put it in my portfolio, 100%.
Yeah.
Because there's a nice little 3-1, nice little pocket, would have been really good long term. I'm just not in that mode right now.
Right.
So I'm kind
that's
of
what
liquidity.
was happening or has been happening is that the investors that do buy investment, they hold them because the rental rates are so high over there.
Yeah.
And people, like you said, they don't move, man. People are there. They take ownership, either if they're renting or own. So most of the neighborhoods are very quiet. So a lot of the investors that bought there held and didn't.
They've kept it.
Yeah, so it would be hard to find comp prices if nobody's selling.
Yeah, it's just
that's
not
a good thing.
Not as much. Yeah. So okay. So but
you're on
so
Morgan
not
Road
as
over
much.
there, or what?
It's on Carriage House.
Okay.
It's Carriage House. Yeah. So but okay. Well, that's interesting. So not as much in Tarrant. I know Tarrant is a little bit of it is a big rental market, but I don't know if the funds liked the specs and the price points and all that. They like a little bit of equity. They seem to buy in where they're getting a 3-2 that has a little bit of an equity upswing on the back end.
Also, it's not so much the demographic; it's more about what's around it. So if you go down Tarrant, it's all industrial, plants and No, not too many. That's not where people are moving, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not moving to Tarrant, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Maybe eventually as, North Birmingham migrates more that way, perhaps, right?
It could be. I mean, I really like the Fultondale-Gardendale corridor, like that whole 65, and I'm wondering if some of the progress there moves into Tarrant. Because Tarrant's kind of between, Center Point and, Fultondale-Gardendale.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just don't know if it's going to progress.
Tell you what to look out for though is North Birmingham. It's not going to go. It's going to keep growing that way.
Yeah.
All the way up toward Findlay Avenue and beyond.
Yeah.
Coming around the backside of Tarrant. Right there.
So it was interesting. We were talking offline. You were talking about a house that you just basically crushed it on, and it was in that area. Yeah. So talk me through that Airbnb.
It was my first one, dude. Like
that's crazy.
So I had been doing work for Main Street and all of them, and about 3 years ago, the electrician that worked with us a lot, and he was like, man, he was talking. We were kind of like in this group now where we had been working together so long that we were kind of feeding information off of each other, think tanks.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, you ought to start buying yourself. Because I was the contractor. He was the electrician. And I was like, really, you think? And he's like, yeah, why aren't you doing what they do? And I'm like, I don't know why I'm not, because I'm scared to come off the money. That's what it is. I'm afraid. I don't know. It's not like me. I know if I go out and pour that driveway, I'm gonna make $5,000, right?
Right.
But I don't know if I put $100,000 in this house, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
And it's a leap of faith, right? So I bought that house for $38,000. I think $38,000, complete gut reno. New sheetrock windows, kitchen. It turned out to be really pretty, and I was doing it to flip it. And then my buddy who runs Airbnbs in the area, his name is Charles Ledbetter. He wouldn't mind if I said his name. Ledbetter Stays. He's a great guy, one of my good friends. He's coming over tonight to watch the Tyson fight, dude.
Nice.
That's coming up. You might want to get him on here. Really.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
I'll link you guys up together.
Yeah.
He said, hey, man, why don't you turn that into an Airbnb? And I was like, you think it'd do well? And he spit some numbers out. I said, dude, you got to be crazy. I said, okay, look, we'll do it. And
you're like, smoke and mirrors, man. This can't be real.
I'm kidding, man. I was thinking, if keeping it for a long term, it's $900 a month.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's no money there. After you pay your insurance and all that, we get $250 a door, maybe.
Yeah.
So I just gave in. I said, all right. So I put about $15,000 of furniture in there and made it even look prettier. And I swear, the first month they did $2,200 in the month.
Wow.
And I was just like, and I could see it. It's like rent. And then for the next 2 years, it consistently did at least $3,000 to $3,600 a month.
Wow. That's crazy.
Great.
That's great. Now, and on the back end, you sold it, right?
Yeah, and I sold it because I wanted to take that money because I bought 2 duplexes over by over by the school that just closed, Birmingham Southern.
Okay.
So I own 2 duplexes over there, and I want to take that money, move it into this duplex, and renovate it. And now it's 2 3-bedroom, 2-bath units, and it does $10,000 a month revenue
In Airbnb.
in Airbnb.
That's incredible.
It's
So
crazy.
you took the 32 plus reno. What were you into the reno
I was
for?
110 grand with furniture and all.
Okay. So 110.
Sold it for.
And now, sold it for 178.
Yeah,
Took
178.
that profit and all that and rolled it into this other, and now you're at 10 grand in profit.
And then, hold on.
That's
I'm not
crazy.
done. Actually, I got that.
He's like,
Airbnb.
and then I bought Birmingham Southern.
That's later, right?
Yeah, right?
I'm on a mission. I ain't gonna lie. I bought a trailer park since then, but
Okay.
Actually, I had a good opportunity. I owned 2 duplexes on that block. I had planned to buy the whole block eventually.
Yeah.
But I fell into another property I wanted to really buy real bad, and it was this trailer park. So I sold that duplex, which I'm gonna say some numbers. I bought it for about 120,
Right.
and I sold it for 380.
Nice.
And
That's great.
Yeah,
That's really
so
great.
it turned in. I made money off of it for
Right.
the Airbnb, but I got it up and going. And I got one on the corner where right now getting ready. I'm gonna actually keep this one because now the market in that area, 3 more have already done on the same block, and it's built the value up so much right there.
Right.
So what I did is I went into an area. I bought these properties. I actually created an infrastructure for the market to go up.
Yeah.
And I plan to do that in the future in other areas.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing of creating your own comp, basically like believing in a pocket.
Yeah.
And then, where you can get in early at a good price.
Yeah.
And then effectively, because of the quality of work and also seeing the potential, the gap, right? You create your own market and just keeps climbing and climbing. So that's incredible. What do you think? I haven't really researched this, so this you may know because you have properties over there. Birmingham Southern, I think there's talk of it getting a new tenant, but I don't know where that's at.
They sold the college, I heard, to not UAB, but
I thought UAB wanted it, but I wasn't
maybe it
sure.
was UAB that bought it.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is sold from what I heard. Now I don't know that is hearsay because I don't have facts, but
yeah, neither of us do.
I have heard. Yeah, I have heard that. I think it sold to UAB.
Okay,
and I think it is,
I need to,
which is going to be great. Guys, great for the area. Look, if you need to know anything, and if UAB is buying that, you better buy over
in
there.
that pocket. Yeah.
Oh man, and
I need to verify that, and maybe in a later episode get information
There's
because
houses-
that's really helpful.
There's houses on that main road right there. I forgot what it is. That goes along Birmingham.
the backside.
And if you go
Yeah,
over and keep going, there's some beautiful houses on the right there. They look like Mountain Brook homes from.
I think if that will help Bush Hills.
Bush Hills,
and
that is
like that whole pocket. I mean, that's the hard thing about some of these areas is there are some gorgeous homes,
Beautiful.
that unfortunately because of just movement of poverty and rich and all that of the city, the history. So there's so much history here. They got it kind of abandoned or dilapidated. And to go back in to fix them, I mean, it is big dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But once you do it, it's just like you have an amazing product in a great location with so much history. And, you just, not to say it's bad about the cookie cutter, like, Canterbury out, in Hoover, but it just doesn't have the same feel.
No, I looked at a house over in Bush Hills not long ago. The lady was buying it, lived in Texas, and they were moving here. And there's a string of homes there that are well maintained, and the people are still like living there. This house was gorgeous. I mean, absolutely beautiful. It was probably a 150-year-old house though, but man, I would love to have that house. It's so pretty.
Yeah, and just the architecture, the 2 stories and some of them. I mean, there's a lot of that in Eastlake. There's a lot of that in Woodlawn.
Eastlake's another one, yeah.
Those pockets are definitely coming back. And I think people are valuing, those areas. They're valuing. As the city has grown out, I think there is a resurgence of coming back to the downtown area and stuff.
Yeah, we worked with Growth. Have you ever heard of those?
Mm-mm.
So Growth is a nonprofit through the lifespan of ALR. We so in Woodlawn, you mentioned Woodlawn. Growth has bought plots of abandoned homes within Birmingham,
Very
and it's
cool.
a nonprofit, and they've been building 3-2s on them. Kind of keeping the same architectural feel of the existing. But we did 4 or 5 right there in Woodlawn for them, and they're trying to do the same thing, create a new pocket, right, where people will expand out, try to bring in some more, some more goodness, and
that's awesome.
Clean it up a little bit.
So you did. Let's keep on that journey. So ALR started with windows. Everybody needs window. And then you guys branched into, doing a lot of, stuff for funds. Mm-hmm. And then from there, now, what are you guys up to, and kind of, you kind of progress more into, doing some custom work and, flips for higher end clients in some different areas. Not to say you still won't do work ultimately, but you've kind of grown into some different spaces and different price points, right?
Absolutely. The funny thing is, the one thing that I was afraid of is actually what got me into doing more custom stuff, going out and buying flips, right? I had done a few up until now, and then I found one in Homewood, West Homewood, and I didn't know anything about the market. Again, very young and buying flips and moving them. And I thought, hey, this is Homewood. I talked to my realtor. She said the comps would be around $350 when we got done, and I could see it.
Yeah.
And I bought this house in West Homewood for $100,000. This was just about 2 or 3 years ago. And man, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make this house my design. It's going to be me. I'm going to pick out all the tile, all the paint, everything. And then, so I did that. And I had people riding by the neighborhood every day. We remodeled this whole house in 3 months. Okay. Start to finish. And that's like tearing the brick down off the side, put board back side, new windows.
Wow.
Gutting the sheetrock out, relay out the walls.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you got it for $100K.
It needed a lot of work. It was a hoarder situation, man.
Yeah,
when I actually walked in the house, I almost got sick. It was really a sad situation.
Yeah, that's tough.
This neighborhood is very beautiful. West Homewood is right around from the park area right there. And I flipped this house, man, and I make it look absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I pour my heart into the kitchen layout and the design. I put a coffered ceiling in it. I mean, I just did things above and beyond. And what did I do? I tried something clever. I told my realtor, I said, I want to do an open house for the neighborhood.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so what I did was just...
Because everybody's been seeing it, and they're curious.
Yeah, so I just put signs out, and we went around and handed out flyers, and we did an open house in the neighborhood. That's awesome. And I wanted people to see what we did, because we were new. You got those bigger companies. I'm not going to name them now. I want to give them a shout out. But you got some bigger ones in Homewood that have been controlling the industry and market there. Yeah. And we were a new guy on the block. So about 50 or 60 of the neighbors show up.
That's awesome.
And it isn't the next week. My phone's blowing up. These people, I got 2 or 3 appointments over in Homewood, and we have not left the area since.
Wow.
That's kind of what, and then at Vestavia, and it trickled into there, and Homewood, and Pelham, and Mountain Brook. It's just been a God thing. Like
all started with one house.
It all started with a prayer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it started with one house though. Yeah, that's right. And then the next one I did was on Raleigh Avenue, and I said, this is working. What I did worked, right?
Right.
So now I'm like, we got a 2-story addition. First one we've ever done. They want me to tear the roof off, add 1,000 square foot to the top.
Okay.
I land the job, right? And I'm like, out of all the guys I have, I'm managing this project. And I added 1,000 square foot to these people's house right before Thanksgiving and get done in 8 weeks on Raleigh Avenue. And everybody in the neighborhood saw that happen. And I even get more phone calls. And they're asking me questions like, I saw how fast that happened. Is that always? I said, well, we built a schedule out. What I took from Brassfield and Gorey, that's exactly what I took from them. Build a tight schedule out. Keep the timelines. Meet your deadline dates. If you meet your deadline dates, you will finish when you say you will finish.
Well, because in the commercial world, if you don't hit your deadlines, you're talking about thousands of dollars a day.
A day.
In holding costs, in other subs or whatever, and then the tenant moving in, whatever that construction. I mean,
penalties.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that world, but there are penalties,
that's
right?
How
if you don't give if you don't give occupancy, you are getting charged back from that client.
Some of them are $50,000 a day.
If you're you don't give over occupancy.
Every day you're behind.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it matters.
It matters, and they instilled that in me, and it matters here, and it matters anyway.
Yeah,
I'm in somebody's home. I don't want to. And here's the other thing, guys. Whoever's listening, if you're running a company, every hour you work is worth $1 value, right?
Yeah.
And if you string those out longer and longer and longer, well, you just decrease your value, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about capitalizing my value. I have one life to live, and every hour I live it, I want it to be worth the very most. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the right perspective of anybody in this world. You don't have but a number of days, and whatever you find to be the most important thing, it needs to be valuable. So
That's good.
I don't want to live my life working, so I make those hours very valuable so I can spend my family time when I want to. Like today, we talked, today's Friday, man. We usually take it easy at ALR on Friday. Like the guys are out kind of buttoning up loose ends today, and that's what we do on Fridays. It's like, hey, we got this straggler, let's go get this. Trying to close out things, and clean up where we may have left something behind because we're too busy to pay attention to it or whatever.
I love that concept too, and sometimes I like working hard, and it's like when you're working, let's work hard.
Yeah.
And so we can play hard too.
Yeah.
Work hard, play hard. And I love that concept of just, instead of halfway doing it when you're working and grumbling and and then you're just not as productive, and then you end up working longer because the job still has to get done.
It's just miserable, right? I don't want to be here. It's got to get done.
Yeah.
The task has to be done. And if you're like me, I'm a task checker.
Yeah.
Like, give me 10 things to do in a day, all 10 will get done.
Yeah.
And if the 10th one doesn't, first thing Monday morning or the next day, it gets done, right?
Yeah.
Give me nothing to do, and I'm confused, man. Like, like I need to have something to do.
When we talked offline, you were mentioning about sometimes you are the solution for, there are some other companies who kind of like they have a product and they show up and they give you a budget, and if you say, hey, this doesn't fit within my budget, they say, okay, find someone else, because they do a certain way, which is fine. Like every company is built differently, right? So it's not a negative on those companies, but they're like, we want to do X work this way.
Yeah.
And it seems like you are a little more flexible in the sense of like client first, serving like, tell me your budget, let's backwards engineer it and get you to, if you need another 1,000 square feet because you have a kid and you don't have a master bath, then we got to get you to that product. But the finishes may need to change, the layout may need to change, but we can get you to your budget or come close. So talk about that philosophy a little bit of ALR.
Yeah, that's great. Trying to accomplish a budget without compromising integrity of quality or design, it's what I do. It's really what I feel like has done really well in Homewood, West Homewood, was, just let's look at what the budget is, okay? And sometimes clients don't, when I build a budget out and I give them a $3 tile selection, they don't know they don't want a $3 tile. They want a $6 tile. But what they don't understand is those little things really jack the budget up, countertops, cabinets. And you mentioned framing. You wouldn't think framing could get less, but there is an easier framing build opposed to a very difficult one. And those two things do cost different money,
When you're laying like a tile, for example, if you go large format, because oftentimes labor is labor. Oftentimes. But sometimes there's pivots even on the type of, construction material you use that can cut down on labor. Do you feel like, and it's a small thing, but like large format's cheaper to install than small format tile, and you can save a little on the labor side? Or are there any gaps of labor where you can find margin, or is it mostly material?
Well, when it comes to ceramic tile, I've yet to negotiate any different prices with my tile guy about large or small.
Yeah. They're just like, we're on site, we're mixing the mortar, you're going to pay us.
Yeah. Well, he's such a good tile guy.
Yeah.
And like, to have a good tile guy is really hard, right? So I don't see a need as long, my tile guy charges $10 to $11 a square foot.
He's not mentioning his name on the podcast. You're not getting the number.
No. But on marble, where you got to weep it and you got to soak it, and there's a whole nother process. Yes, there's a large expense. There's a big jump in labor, right?
Right.
But with porcelain tile and glass tile is another one. So glass has to be cut with a wet saw,
Right.
So there's other methods of that, right? So, but porcelain tile is going to be your least expensive to install,
right?
Because you could do a score break, And it's just and it's the least expensive material.
Right. So if someone basically came in and said, they got a quote for a flip and they came in at $200K and there was marble tile involved, you could say, hey, we can not only go to porcelain,
That's right.
but we can, cut down on material and also labor.
That's right.
What other gaps are there where the labor comes down to create the budget overall coming down? And that's not just material.
Flooring, hardwoods opposed to LVP or some other. Carpet's probably your least expensive to install labor price. LVT is going to be your next level. Hardwood's going to be even more than that.
Yeah.
And hardwood's even more because you got to sand, finish, install. So there's two labor. The guy that installs doesn't finish it. So I mean, there's two subs that work on that product. Where if LVP, the guy comes in, lays it. When he's done, he's gone. Yeah. Tile. What I found most investors doing later down the road was tile everywhere. Main Street started doing full houses in tile.
Oh, really?
And yes, the whole house. The last 10 houses I did with them were all tile. And the reason behind it was, and I was like, why are y'all doing tile now? They were doing LVP. Well, if you think about it, if a tile busts, they just got to break that one tile out and replace it, right?
Yeah.
But LVP, man, how do you replace LVP?
You're replacing
pulling
that
out
whole
a bunch
room,
of it, right?
Yeah.
But tile. And it's like, it's actually pretty smart when you think about it.
That's interesting. I personally do not like the feel of tile
I
under
hate
my
it.
feet. Like it's
especially
so
the
I'm
80s
imagining
with
a
the
house.
half-inch grout line. You remember the half-inch grout line?
Yeah.
One by one beige tiles in the 90s, God, they were awful, weren't they?
Dude, it was so brutal. It was so funny. Like I saw this, it was like a skit and it was basically like people coming through a house and looking at it, but it was like from the 90s era, and they're like going through this house and they're like, oh, I think we can go ahead and get some popcorn ceiling. They were wanting to install the carpets, and they were wanting to, they're like, oh, these hardwoods, we could definitely put
Cover
some
these
carpet.
up.
Yeah, we could put some carpet on these hardwoods.
People did that.
Oh yeah, they loved it.
And now we're tearing carpet out.
Now we're tearing it out.
Yeah.
I think, tell me this, and this is not a knock, because I've done it too. I mean, the house in Bessemer, I did it. Because it sells, unfortunately and fortunately. But I think there's going to be a trend at some point, I don't know when it's going to happen, for all of these flips that painted brick. There's going to be a trend where it's like, why did we paint this beautiful brick? I think it's going to get, some are going to get like, pushed back and pressure washed off and like texturized a little different or something. I don't know. It's
a mortar rub or something like that.
I don't know. I just think that there's going to be a trend of like, because there's so many painted brick, white painted brick houses.
Mine's one.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I just did it to one of my rentals. I did it to one of the ones I just sold, because, well, the rental, I will say, it was like this plain pinkish tone brick, and I was just like, dude, that's
hideous.
It was hideous. So it definitely helped in that situation. But like my current house has this really, I mean, I think the brick was pulled from some building downtown, because I mean it's gorgeous, very texturized, has like specks of some paint in it, but for the most part it's like just, and the inside of the house, and I'm torn about it because I think it would brighten the room. The inside of the house has this wall. It's like a full-on wall of brick on the interior, and it's like the interior like main piece where the kitchen's on one side. But I haven't painted it because it's just like, I think retrospect, I would regret it. It would brighten up the room a little bit, but there's so much character in that brick that I'll never paint that brick.
Right.
But I think that there's just going to be a lot. I think there's going to be a trend. Trends move.
More nostalgia value coming back from the brick.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think, I think there'll be. But the thing that you benefit is when you paint an all-white house, you create this uniformity, you create this cleanness, you create this look of like, this is a new house.
Crisp, yeah.
Crisp, yes. It makes it feel like, oh, I'm buying a new house.
Yeah,
and so it works.
Yeah.
And I don't push back on that. It's just, I think there'll be trends where it's like, I wish we didn't have so many painted brick houses in the city.
Well, there's so many unique people out there, right? There's still brick houses being built with the ugliest red brick that you can buy. I don't know why people pick that brick out.
Are you talking about that really deep burgundy red that's like
the old looking red.
Yeah, the old looking. Yeah,
that's the one that we always paint over. You know.
Yeah.
If you ever see like let's say 2012, 11 and up, the khaki or the clay color bricks, those are really trendy. You know.
Yeah, I think they look great.
They look great.
Yeah.
But you get that old, really fire engine red looking brick, man, and it's just old fashioned. You know.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you might run into some people who, I'll say this: we are in the most unique development of different categories of people and unique people in the world these days, and there's a real movement of like old fashioned and not old fashioned and modern, or like I'm a nerd when it comes to mid-century modern. I love that echo that area of design. You know, that's my stuff. I love it. So
so this will be helpful for listeners. What are you seeing in your current client-based work where they're requesting certain stuff? What stuff is kind of trending up on requests for different finishes or different, countertops, different stuff like that that's kind of shifted in the last 2 or 3 years that may be up and coming, if you will? Because you're working with, probably some designers who are on the cutting edge versus just that kind of stuff trickles down to spec work and flips and stuff. Yeah,
so what we're seeing a lot now is more of the warm tones of maybe I want to say farmhouse, but that's not it's not farm. It's the feeling of farmhouse. White oak beams, like the lake house we're working on right now. We're doing white oak beams. The whole cabinets are going to be white oak in there.
Okay. And naturally finished, not painted.
Natural finished white oak. And they're beautiful.
Oh, I bet it's gorgeous.
So pretty, man.
Not cheap, but.
Yeah. No, God, no.
White oak.
$80,000 in cabinets in this house.
Wow.
I would give a shout out to the company, but we won't do that either. But those I'm not doing. I'm actually using a really, really, really reputable company out there to do these cabinets. And in the bathrooms, we are seeing there's a few things. Off-whites are huge. Creating warm tones, man. And then as far as the cabinet structure, the inset, everybody's dying to have inset cabinets. And the full overlay or 3/4 overlay cabinets are kind of. They're not as attractive to some people these days because the inset is more of a really high end. And as far as tops, man, Taj Mahal is the most popular thing out there right now, and it's probably the more expensive ones. Okay. But I'm using a lot of like just Calcuttas and with a brown, really brownish grain in it. And gold flack. As far as gold is.
Is that the marble you're talking about, or
no? It's a quartz.
The quartz.
It's a quartz.
It's a quartz, but it has those tones. You know what's interesting, and this is like a little bit of a hack, which I just learned. So. When I put information on the podcast, sometimes I feel like, do people just like think like, oh, Todd, I can't believe you didn't know that information.
No, you're just asking me.
But but I went down. I was getting some countertops done. I got a quote in, and then I was like, I'm just going to swing by because I haven't seen that finish because we were trying to go a slightly different finish than I've ordered in the past. So I swung by the countertop place. And he was like, yeah, we got this, and then he's like, oh, we've got some blemished stuff. And I was like, there's blemished like quartz? And he's like, yeah. And it was basically like the pits, some of the pits were rusted out. Like some of the flecking had not come across the way they wanted it to. And it was really minor. Now, granted, like once it was installed, I saw a few spots and I'm like, I can see how that kind of could get annoying. Like it looks like an imperfection amongst the pattern. Yeah. But I got this countertop for probably 2/3 the price. Wow. And I was like, this is a flip. It's still going to look great. Sold.
Yeah, really.
And it was just by going by or, so now I know when I call my rep and say, hey, like this is the specs. Pitch me if you have any blems in stock, and if they do, then I'll swing by and see if I'm okay with that variable and pull the trigger. Because I got a really nice product still for a really good price.
I would love to know that.
Yeah, I had no idea that there were blemishes. Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing.
That's the first I heard.
So I taught you something.
Yeah, I'm gonna call my quartz guy here.
Say,
and just
hey, how come you haven't been?
Why ain't you told me about these blemishes? Like, are you just selling them to me and I don't even know I'm getting them?
Yeah. Well, and then, like I said, I don't know if that happens a lot. I'm gonna call the rep and say, oh, do you guys get that often, or if this is like a once a year, just happen to strike it lucky. But I was pretty pleased with that. So I think I saved like $500 or $600.
And
so.
you know, I mean, I think it's all derivative toward like what is the flip, right?
Right.
Like, what does it look like? Is it a Homewood flip? Is it a Vestavia flip? Is it a Bessemer flip?
Yeah.
You know, because you can allow things. Yeah, quartz in a Bessemer flip is a high end flip. You know, over there.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But there's a couple things I do no matter what because I believe in them. And countertops is one. Because if you go in and you're going to you could spend on a cheaper product probably and save yourself like maybe $600 or $700. Quartz is not insane right now.
No.
And
I'm going to get a low end for like 42 a square foot.
Yeah. And so, you know, so that's one thing I do like doing is a little bit nicer countertops. And then the other thing that I do that's I think in my opinion, is lighting. Yeah. So lighting always makes sense. So I do recessed in all of my main spaces, no matter what, and in the kitchen as well. And yes, is it going to cost me in wiring and all that? Probably an extra $1,000 to $2,000, depending on the size of the home. But I found that it sells. It sells the product. People are way happier with that home.
They're getting a new home.
Yeah.
They feel like they're getting a new home.
Yeah. I mean, the light just makes everything
You could
pop.
paint the cabinets and put new tops on it and a new backsplash and put lighting in there.
Yeah.
And it feels new, right? The cabinets won't make the lighting feel any, but I get what you're saying.
It's a way better product
There's little flush mounts everywhere.
Yeah. Flush mounts just light it up, just make everything super bright. So, okay. So definitely some countertop. You know, people are kind of trending towards some different things there. Anything else in that space that you're seeing? That's interesting about the inset cabinets.
Yeah, inset. Yeah. They're just, you know, I built an inset vanity just for a bathroom over in Vestavia that we're still working on. We're almost done with it. You can see it on my Instagram. I think we got some updated photos of it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
But beautiful. They're just so hard to. So the idea is overlay goes on the outside of the face. Inset goes inside the opening, so it has to be very tight fitted.
Right.
You know, it's just more difficult. But trending, you know, Jacobine is the most popular stain color right now.
Yeah.
And it has been in a while. It's my favorite stain. White oak floors, man. I'm the higher
really
ends. Really high end. I did a lake house at Lake Martin, all white oak natural floors, white oak cabinets.
Because most oak is red, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So then what are they staining the white oak? Are they going natural?
Natural.
They're going natural on the white oak.
Sometimes it could be like a pickle finish, you know, like a wash.
Okay.
But I dig the natural.
I think it looks good. Are you doing water base on that, or are you doing it? Okay,
yep,
gotcha.
Yep.
That's I love it. Water base is not as robust,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So do you just have to know that your refinish timeline is just shorter? And
it's a little bit, but more importantly, you don't have that pungent, that petroleum product in your house. You know, I think that's what most people are. That's another thing you said, trending, like kids conscious these days. Most of my clients are so kids conscious. Paints, they gear more toward organic and natural things rather than, you know, petroleum products, man.
Interesting. They don't want the oil-based paints.
You get over into the areas where we're working at, you know, people are very conscious about their health. Man, there is a big difference between the cultures, you know, as far as, you know, the flip properties or whatever to working in somebody's home who has an expendable income, who can do a $500,000 renovation. Who can do that, right?
Because there's an element of like, I don't want to be completely upside down, but this is my home and I want to benefit from the finishes and enjoy the space and all that. So what, you know, kind of as we wrap up, like, what's the future look like for you guys, you know?
Man, I'm going to buy more trailer parks. So I think that...
Personally, you're like, I need to buy more trailer parks because that's been great.
I think, you know, one thing we didn't talk about is what are my thoughts about, like, rental, you know, investments in the future. For me, single family dwellings, I'm not really focusing on investing in those anymore. But I think that what we're looking at, we still have a big housing shortage that we kind of stopped talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And what happened with the boom with all these hedge funds? We had a housing shortage, so they bought them. So, well, what I'm seeing now, these people are First Key's building brand new neighborhoods and they're renting them out. They are building brand new neighborhoods and renting these houses out for $1,200, $1,300 a month. Yeah. But also the swing I'm finding is that, like my trailer park, I've created a campground there too, and people are transitional. They're looking for other ways of living, and they're buying these brand new campers and living in them. So I'm about to put 19 new trailers or camper spots, not trailers. I'm not moving any more trailers in, and they're going to be all camper.
Wow.
Yeah, man. It's like, it's a whole trend. This is happening all over the world.
Just alternative ways to live. Yeah.
With the housing shortage, they can't rent, right? I mean, the trailers that we have out there that I've renovated, we've rented out within a week of it being on Facebook.
Wow.
A week it's gone. So, but we're also finding as soon as I get a camper spot ready, somebody's moving on it the next day.
Wow.
I got people waiting right now to move on there. So I think that, the future looks like, for ALR investments, we're going to be moving into, I want to build a campground, a real campground on a lake somewhere.
Okay.
A big one.
Very cool.
Yeah, I want that to be, that's going to be my next project for me.
Yeah.
But outside of the company building is, man, we're going to keep on killing it. We're going to keep, we want to build relationships in these neighborhoods. We want to be there for the rest of our lives. I want this company to be handed down to my kids or whoever shows and takes over, I want to, it's very important when you're young to become successful. And then when you get my age, you want to be remembered, So I'm looking at being remembered. This last part of my life is going to be all about leaving whatever's behind as my stamp on this world.
Man, I love that. And I love that, these conversations are always enlightening, and the perspective that you've had, the journey you've taken, where each step sequentially set you up for the next step. And like you said, you're kind of more looking in the legacy and how, you kind of have all these skill sets to pass down. You have this opportunity to pass down to the next generation. And I think the next phase of your life will be like, how do I continue? I mean, you still got a lot of good life of work in front of you, but how do you pass that on? That knowledge and that wealth of your company and all the different things. So this conversation has been amazing. If people want to work with you, want to connect with you, want to talk about trailer parks, or they got some land on a lake or whatever, how do they reach out to you?
We do all of it. Commercial. We went over everything. I do investment properties. We do new builds. We do big time renovations. But you can reach us on. You can look us up online. We got a Facebook. We got a website. ALR Construction LLC. There is one other one that is no longer in existence. Don't get us confused. But then you can also call my office at 205-222-7787. Jenny would be glad to set up an appointment.
I love it.
And anybody that wants to talk about investments or whatever. I mean, I'm a nerd when it comes. I love this stuff, so I've enjoyed this a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, time, like I said, I always say this: time is our most valuable asset, and for you to hang out with me for this hour has been incredible.
It's been my pleasure, really.
Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah,
we'll catch you soon.
Hopefully, we're friends forever now, right?
I'm planning on it.
We're friends forever, right?
All right, thanks, boss.
Thanks again.